I'm here with my daughter Chana, and look, in the background is my son Yosef. The best side of Yosef is, but Yosef, basically everyone's looking at your tush, but
He's got a good butt.
He's making a fire for us. So, I wrote an essay actually when I was at Oxford about light and darkness and God's creation of light and darkness, and I'll get into some of the details in a moment. But as my son Mendy was discussing with me today, I was telling Chana that the same kind of light and darkness that God creates in the 6 days of creation, because the first thing God says is, let there be light, there should be light, illumination, there should be vibrance. And then on Wednesday, on the 4th day of creation, God creates the sun, the luminaries, and the stars. I said that the same thing has to exist in relationships, because in these difficult times, one might even say in these dark times, and we keep on hearing terrible horror stories. I heard today about a 45-year-old man who's fighting for his life right now from the coronavirus. We heard yesterday about a man in his 50s, not just people in their 60s and 70s. And it becomes almost something overbearing. And then I had a medical thing. I'll get to that in a second today. And I always think to myself that I want to be a blessing to my family and my marriage and never a burden. And being a blessing means the ability to uplift people at all times. And you need to think of that way consciously in a relationship. Hannah, it comes to the core question of, why does someone enter into a relationship? You're a young woman. Why would you give up your freedom and have to share your life and accommodate other people's opinions and other people's preferences if you're in a relationship with a man and then marry that man? And for women, the question of why marry becomes even more pronounced insofar as they lose their last name. They kind of lose a little bit of their identity. God willing, they have children. She's the one who puts herself at risk, and her body she's the one who has to go through the pregnancy. It's not, why would a woman do all that? And I say to myself, and so I'd like you to comment on, that people go into a relationship because they want to be uplifted. They want to be inspired. They don't want to have to do the heavy lifting of life on their own, which is more difficult. They want to share happiness and even share sometimes sorrow and pain, God forbid. And in moments like these with the coronavirus, we see it because people are home. And instead of people pulling each other down, oh, there's bad news here and bad news there, and we sit around the family table and people only sharing bad news, people want light. They want someone that's going to inspire and uplift them.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I think it's mainly to assuage loneliness.
That's not the only reason we go into a relationship to assuage loneliness, but
that's one of the reasons for sure.
Yeah, it is.
There are a million reasons. I think, especially for women, you want to be able to share a very vulnerable part of yourself with one person. You want to be able to show a certain side of yourself that no one else gets to see. There's also a lot of social pressures. There's a million reasons.
But you're not going to date a guy who is a downer, right? And why think that once you're married, the same is true? Like you and I were talking a lot today, and I was saying that as the head of a family, 9 children, thank God, all our grandchildren are around as well, thank God, that when the news of the day gets me down, I'm not an atom, cut off from the rest of the world. I'm part of a family. And if I bring a negative energy, if I become a burden that other people feel they have to cheer me up, then the whole place becomes deflated. And I feel that in a relationship, we have to always think that we want to be a blessing. And how do you become a blessing? How do you become a blessing to other people in moments like these, especially? I know that you know.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a burden, like fighting your moods, and I think a lot of people who are in relationships right now are going through that because they're getting stressed out from being together so much. But even now, like when our families we're all stuck together, and it's a beautiful thing, but it's hard. You can feel trapped. And also I feel like some days I want to go into a corner and just be alone and breathe. And I know that affects everyone else because everyone's moods are intertwined because we're all stuck together. And that's definitely true in a relationship. I don't know.
So what are you saying? So let's say you feel, second oldest daughter in our family, let's say you feel, I need to just go into a corner by myself. But your absence will be noticed because your sisters are close to you, your nephews and nieces are close to you. Is that a selfish act or is it a necessary act? Do we sometimes need some kind of personal rehab to restore ourselves even while we're part of this bigger whole and all dependent on each other?
No, I think that could even be part of why it's hard to enter into a relationship, because you are making yourself you're being dependent on someone, but you also have to be there for them all the time. And that can definitely, I think that can be a burden. Sorry, I do.
That you have to
not just giving up your freedom, but to emotionally be supportive of someone all the time, especially in times like this. I think can be really,
because you're just giving and giving so much, and so you can feel like you're a spent force after a while.
Yeah,
you can feel like your essence is being sucked out of you, and it becomes a little bit artificial after a while. Like, I have to keep everybody upbeat. I have to keep everybody optimistic, but it's not real because I'm not feeling optimistic. I'm not feeling that way internally.
I don't know. Are you supposed to be your complete self in your relationship? Everyone thinks you are, but maybe you're not. I don't know.
Well,
are you supposed to be everything that you're feeling and expose like even the ugliest parts of yourself, or are you supposed to shield even the person that you're with from your dark side? I don't know.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I use this title. It's a really good question. And we're not going to find all the answers. And you know what? This coronavirus pandemic is an incredible moment of truth, of people being more vulnerable and being more truthful, because this is as real as it gets, a global crisis, and all we have is each other, and these conversations matter. I don't have an easy answer to your question. On the one hand, I believe in what I wrote, that there's light and darkness in a relationship. Darkness represents depression, bitterness, moodiness, unpredictability, and it's never pleasant being in a relationship with someone who has experiences those things. Light represents optimism, faith, being upbeat, loving, romantic, complimentary. But we don't always feel that way. Sometimes we feel anything but that. And should you fake it? So I think to myself, that's why I put the subtitle, I still have to be a blessing rather than a burden, that even if I'm going through those emotions, I need to fight them. And I'm not saying I can't talk about them with my wife, your mother, or with you, my daughter, or my friends. I think I can talk about them, but I don't think I can be a burden. I don't think I can pull people down. And I feel.
I agree with that, but I think it's like, from what I've seen in relationships, there's always one person who's more light and one person who's more dark, and then maybe that's what makes them gravitate towards each other. But I think in times like these, I don't think it's fair to make the one who's always light carry you. I think it's, I think this is a really hard time to be going through, and everyone, and laughter gets you through it, and then jokes and everything like that. But it is definitely a more depressing time. But it's a struggle to keep your mood up and not be a bummer.
Okay, well, we try. You and I.
We're bumming everyone out, actually.
No. In Kosher.Sex, what I do is, in the book, I utilize the wisdom of the Torah and brought it to bear on human sexuality and love and relationships. Same thing is true here. The first thing God creates is light. Light is created. You don't always feel light. You don't always feel like you're luminous. You sometimes feel very dark. Light has to be created. We do have an element of control, and we have to do that uplift. And it's one of the hardest things, to be perfectly honest. I mean, think about it. Each and every one of us is kind of atomized right now in conversations like these at home. Most of America's population is being kind of ordered to be at home, and you're having to be this bulwark against a tsunami of bad news. That every time you turn on the news, you just hear the cases spiked here and deaths spiked there, and there aren't enough masks. And amidst all of that, we have to create light. Light is created. And it's created specifically where there is darkness. And I don't want it to be the kind of silly light that ignores reality. It has to embrace reality. But it still has to be light. There is light and darkness. And interestingly, this blessing that we say every day in Davening Chana, Yotzer Or Uborei Choshech, God forms light, and he also creates darkness. Even darkness kind of has to be created. I mean, the news doesn't only have to focus on the negative, but they do. We don't have to only focus on the negative. There has to be some kind of internal battle. And maybe that's what we owe each other in a relationship, to at least engage in that internal battle, to be more of a blessing and not a burden.
Yeah, but I think also today there's so much talk about acknowledging feelings and just being whatever you're feeling, that you should acknowledge it and respect that feeling and honor it and experience that feeling. So especially when you're in a relationship, I don't know how that comes into play, because if you're really feeling down, are you supposed to honor and ride that wave, or are you supposed to just like crush it and suppress it and make and be a joy to be around? I don't know how to, the middle ground I think is hard to find. I don't know. This is depressing me even more.
Why? Why? It's a vital and critical conversation. What are our responsibilities in a relationship? Is it to be authentic and say how we really feel, especially in moments like these when we all feel a little bit down? Or is it to the contrary, stiff upper lip and bury our emotions, and that's more about artifice? And you know what the answer is? I think it's what Maimonides always said, the Rambam. It's the golden middle path. It's a bit of both. It's about acknowledging our authenticity, but still battling ourselves internally to look for the positive, to find the positive, to be optimistic. That's what leadership is, for example. I cannot solve the coronavirus. I lack the medical skills. I lack the training. And I can't even save the whole world. I'm not the world's redeemer, but I can help to rescue this family, my marriage, our family, my children. You become a personal redeemer, and you are that as well. You, as an older daughter in this family, and we're all hunkered together, and many people are watching, you can also, people are giving us hearts there because it's true. There's a messianic element in each and every one of us. By the way, I've always believed that the Jewish messianic idea has to be personalized, and all of us have to see ourselves as a little bit of the Mashiach, man, woman alike, that there's a part of the world that we can redeem, and all I can do right now is redeem my family. I lack the capacity to do more than that. And by the way, let's connect it with sexuality for a second, because this is also for Kosher.Sex, which you created. What is sex? Sex is that feeling of liberation. Sex is a feeling, because why is sex a joy in a relationship? Because it allows us to finally experience the beauty of touch, the validation of sensation, of all the five senses. It's a carnival. It's a celebration of the senses, and it lifts our moods. And that's why we argue that when a couple don't have a good intimate life, they don't have, the rest of the relationship is suffering because the soul is missing. Because life does get you down, everyday burdens. And you don't need just Netflix and something to escape reality in order to be happier. You need the validation of touch. You need the validation of kissing, of exchanging life breaths. And God breathed into Adam the breath of life, and Adam and Eve, and becoming bone of one bone and flesh of one flesh. There's something very real about that. And it is all about vulnerability. Nakedness is all about vulnerability. It's about exposing who you truly are. It's not about artifice. I'll ask you a very straightforward question. If you have a choice, God willing, your parents want you to meet a really nice guy, Mitzvah Shem. If you have a choice of dating a man who is always upbeat and he's always optimistic, and every time you tell him, oh, I want to talk, I got fired from my job today. Oh, don't worry, you're going to get another job. Would you prefer someone like that, or someone who you could speak to, who comes and exposes their vulnerability, some of their anxieties? Is that too much of a burden? What would you prefer?
I think the upbeat guy, because I would need that balance. But
you need that balance. But what if he's only upbeat? What if you can never really share with him? Because every time you tell him something, well, it's going to be great, it's going to be fine, it's going to be...
Why does it have to be one or the other?
Okay. So it's the golden middle path. It's the golden middle path.
Yeah.
By the way, I think that's one of the reasons why in Judaism, the sexual connection between husband and wife, which we argue for in Kosher.Sex, is the mikvah. It alternates between 2 weeks of verbal exchange, emotional exchange without touching, and then 2 weeks of validation through touch. That is, a couple are kind of like a sailboat. They kind of tack in the wind a little bit. You go through 2 weeks of validation through. It's not communicative. It's not expressive verbally. It's more emotional. It's more visceral. It's more erotic. But then you go through 2 weeks where you pull back and you're able to share vulnerability and speak, and that actually allows a relationship to be replenished. It is about having both. I'm just not sure you can have both simultaneously. I think one can cancel the other out.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I don't really.
Do you think if you were married, you think you would find it easier to go through this whole coronavirus experience because you'd have one person you could talk to as opposed to being one of 9 that you're having to help shore everybody up? Would it be easier, or would it be harder, or the same?
I have no idea, because from what I'm seeing, it's hard either way. I mean, I think it's nice that I see my siblings who have a spouse, and they have someone they're actually going through this with, so they don't have that anxiety of feeling lonely. But it's also really hard that someone's always there and you don't get a second to yourself. I like being alone sometimes.
Okay,
It's
well
about me.
but that would also kind of explain, or the whole idea of separation, of sexual separation. There is alone time in Judaism. You're not always available to each other.
And they're always talking to you.
Not necessarily. You're not supposed to be around. I mean, these are extraordinary times that we're around each other so much.
Right. This is like an anomaly.
Listen, God willing, this will pass. I kind of think we're going to miss it a little bit. Strange, not the coronavirus. God forbid. Ugh, may God destroy it from the earth, uproot it.
Closest.
But I mean, yeah. I think we kind of, we'll all go our separate lives, and then our priorities. Listen, God willing, this scourge will pass. We'll go back to our priorities. And what are our priorities? It's a little bit of entertainment, going out at night, making money, all those things which we now know are secondary to just life. We just want to be alive right now. Everyone wants to be alive.
Yeah. No, a lot of people are calling this obviously not corona that's making people sick, but it's a bit of a cleansing. Like people are just seeing what really matters and not focused on anything except staying safe and staying healthy. And there's definitely things we can take from it, but it sucks.
Look at what Mindy. I'm looking at people's. Look at what Mindy told us. Your brother, my son, that there was an article in Vanity Fair that celebrities have nothing to say right now. Like celebrities have never been duller because when they can't when they don't have all their script writers writing their lines, or when they can't sing, or when they're just celebrities and they're just stripped of all of that, and they're trying to give people messages about being uplifted. They're not special anymore. They're not entertaining us right now because what they have to offer is not what we're looking for. We're actually looking for hope and uplift and medicine, and it's the doctors and the nurses and all these unsung heroes that you would normally overlook and ignore.
No, corona is very real. I think this is the most real thing we've ever felt. Like people in America, like there was the war, but and there's been things here and there in politics, but this is the most real thing that's ever really happened to us. It's affecting each and every one of us. And celebrity in Hollywood is so make believe that it's just not even. I don't think that amount of entertainment could even touch us right now. I mean, Netflix is through the roof, so I might be wrong.
No, because celebrity in the way
we
right.
It's.
I like what you're saying. In other words, you're saying that all of the tragedies that we've witnessed, you're in your late 20s. All the tragedies that have happened in the world, Iraq, Afghanistan, terror bombings in Israel, 9/11 when you were a little girl. Some of them were immediate. 9/11 was not far from here at all. We're in New Jersey right now. The wars were far away, but even so, it was still didn't hit you, right?
Yeah.
But now we know that this virus.
No, everyone's being personally affected. That their lives have been upended.
And we also know it's lurking. It's just around. It's so immediate. So you're saying that the artifice of celebrity, it's just too real.
I mean, they can't save us? They can usually save us from our everyday escapes. They can help. Like you're bored in your marriage, or your friends are making more money than you, or your whatever it is. But this is something so real. It's so visceral that I think people want real content, and celebrity can't really give that.
Is it scary?
Hollywood.
The time that we're in?
I think so. I think it's the unknown, I think, is what's freaking me out the most.
What do you mean?
Not knowing when this is going to end, how long life is going to be like this.
And not knowing who's going to be affected, God forbid.
Yeah.
Hashem should keep us all right. That's true.
Families, yeah. It's scary, but
Chana, what you're doing...
Got to keep moving.
Okay, let me tell you why these conversations are so important, because that's what you're promoting in Kosher.Sex. Interaction, intimacy. Intimacy is the hardest thing. Most of us would take a time like this and we would just bottle it up and just keep it on the inside, and we'd be sad. And the need to express, it's critical. That's what a relationship is. A relationship is the human capacity to come outside of ourselves and share. And sometimes we share light, and sometimes we share some darkness, and we battle to make it better, but it's about sharing that authenticity. And we've moved so far away from that because of this image that we're all supposed to project. And social media has been one of the biggest problems, because we're all supposed to be so happy. And look how dumb some of this has been. the Instagram and Facebook, and it's all just about sharing. And I'm going here and there. And what do you share when you're afraid? I don't want to share that because then I want to have followers. But is that why you're alive, to have followers?
Yeah. No, we were also talking about how Kosher.Sex. We had this discussion about. Remember, you were saying that physical touch is even more important than communication, and people are shocked when you say that. But I think, and you were saying how coronavirus is actually attacking that whole fabric of physical touch, because that's what's pushing everyone away. Not even in a sexual way between men, men and women, or whoever it is. That, like, even the social fabric of people shaking hands or hugging or just being close to one another, that's been completely upended as well. Like, now we're going to be much more suspicious of touching, and that also sucks.
Well,
Really
interesting,
sucks.
not to compare the two, but to look at the trend. It started over the past few years with Me Too, where inappropriate touch was finally called out, right? Not appropriate touch, but inappropriate touch was finally called out. And that was a good thing, because men have to respect women. And that wasn't happening, where women were being degraded by a culture that treated them as a means to an end. Then coronavirus comes along, and suddenly even the most innocent touch is no longer innocent. And it's strange, because our humanity is expressed through our ability to validate one another. That's why we shake hands. You hug people that you love. You kiss your children. You have Boris Johnson, who just told the British people, it was Mother's Day in Britain yesterday, the British Mother's Day, don't visit your grandmother. Call her up. You can't visit, you can't touch. And the fragmentation, that isolation, you begin to see how precious it once was just to hold someone's hand, just to kiss them. You were raised in an age, Hannah, where the lyrics of music are very explicit, and the lyrics can be very degrading to women. But I was born in 1966, so I was too young to remember, but the biggest thing at the time was the Beatles. And they were singing songs like I Want to Hold Your Hand. Now imagine how strange lyrics like that would be. Wow, you want to hold your hand? I mean, things are so explicit. No rapper would rap about how I want to just hold your hand. He or she would be seen as a prude. And yet the coronavirus just if you could just hold someone's hand and validate them, if you could hold a grandparent's hand, a parent's hand, I mean, if they, without, God forbid, putting them at risk. It's amazing that these tiny little things that are so precious to us, that we're so overlooked, and how I don't need the coronavirus to teach us these lessons. Don't get me wrong. I don't believe that the negative is what. I don't think you need darkness in order to have light. I don't think that you need to go through the dark period. But
yeah, but if it's happening, you might as well. Like, I definitely, hopefully after, won't take it for granted when I get to leave the house and just go
on a walk.
Yeah.
And see a tree, and see the blue sky, and also, and health. When we say all these years that you grew up, little girl, we had all these guests at the Shabbos table. And what was the thing I always got people to say? Jew and non-Jew alike, every creed, every ethnicity that came to our house experienced Shabbat dinner for the very first time. I always got them to do one thing. What was it? To toast life. L'chaim. Yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah.
That life. Okay, go to Kosher.Sex. Hannah's doing an amazing job in giving people a lot of hope and things to share and experience, products, information, courses. I'm really proud of her, and I'm grateful that she shares with me. The greatest blessing is family and being able to talk to my daughter, and the conversations are so important that I wanted many of them to be here with you, so you can. I hope that, God willing, our conversations will inspire you having conversations with your kids and your family as well, especially at this time. Don't hold it in. People need to talk, and people need to connect. Go to Kosher.Sex. Quickly, what product can you talk about that you think would bring a little bit of light? What great candles, are there that's going to bring some physical light, the most literal sense?
I'd say go for a board game. They keep it light. They're fun.
That's not literal light. Okay, so that's, you mean to be...
Oh, literal light?
Yeah, I thought, don't you have like...
I guess a candle.
What kind of candle?
Diffuser. We have scented candles, massage candles, anything you can think of.
The massage candles are really cool because you light them and then they melt, and then... Okay, good. What's that called?
Massage candle.
At Kosher.Sex. Okay.
Kosher.Sex.
God bless you all. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna make this 25 minutes exactly. So let me just finally say, I bless all of you, and be hopeful and be radiant and be a blessing and never a burden. And God bless you and your families always.